Hi, welcome to Wine with Chris. Welcome to my cellar. I'm back again for a Christmas special, which marks 1 year of Wine with Chris, because the very first video I did, I had a big messy orange Christmas jumper on, and today we got the polar bears. It's been 2 or 3 months since I did a Wine with Chris video, and to be honest, I thought maybe the run had come to an end, but I just couldn't resist pulling out one last video for the year, and also a bit of reflection. I actually thought maybe this year hadn't been a great year in wine for me. I couldn't really think off the top of my head of many great bottles I'd been able to have. But as I sort of thought about it a bit more, scrolled through the ratings, had a look at some of the Wine with Chris videos, I realised in fact it's been a great year of wine. I've had some great wines over in Ireland. I had a Chateau Talbot vertical tasting with my brothers-in-law and my father. I think it was the 05, 06, 07. And with my dad over in Connemara, one of the contenders for wines of the year was the Saint Henri, which just made me realise, Stonewall Shiraz, Kershaw, the Saint Henri, my taste is changing, and I'm actually really quite turned on to the big fruity Shiraz. I know something like a Kershaw is a bit more reserved, but the Saint Henri, trust me, is not, and I loved it. Big contender for fruity, finest red of the year. It was also the year in which I had my first ever Dom Perignon, 2002, at my dad's 70th birthday, swiftly followed up a week later by the 2004 Paul Roger Blanc de Blanc. And how do you pick those two apart? Very different, but both fabulous wines on the white wines front. Continuing on the white wine front, I found a new favourite Chenin, courtesy of friend of the channel Andre, and that was in 1 or 2 vids, the fabulous Elodie from Old Vine Chenin in South Africa. And most recently, just a week ago, with Andre and with Mark, we had Clos de Pape 2010, fabulous, 98 out of 100 on Wine Spectator, worth every point. Also some other great wines that night, including for me a 5 out of 5 JJ Prum Riesling Spätzle. And as I think back, one other great wine event that comes to mind is at my friend Gary's, back in his garage, his games room, when we shot another video and rolled out 2 fantastic red wines. And sorry, quick pause there, because I realised I couldn't recall the year of the fabulous wine that Gary served up. It was the Cheval des Andes, the South American version of Cheval Blanc on the right bank in Bordeaux, and they've got a fabulous vineyard set up there, and it was the 2013, just coming out of its youth, and a huge wine and a fabulous wine with a lovely big steak. And we also had that night the 2015 Castello Banfi, possibly a bit young, but 2015 and a great Italian vintage, and it was great to contrast those 2 wines. So it has been a brilliant wine year, and of course there have been plenty of good wines that I've had just at home here, and one of the ones that springs to mind, and is probably top 3 of the year, was the Chateau Beaucastel 2007 that I had just one Friday night sitting in the kitchen. And really, for me, the number of components that go into that wine in terms of the flavors and the textures and the aromas, it's almost the complete wine for me. I'm not saying it was the best wine I drank this year, but consistently Beaucastel, I think if a Martian came down from another planet to Earth and I wanted to let them know what red wine tastes like, I'd probably serve them up a Beaucastel, to be honest, at this point. But anyway, we're not here to talk about any of those things tonight. We're here to put the biggest challenge yet of the Elk Cove in front of you here tonight. You may remember from earlier in the year, the Elk Cove beat all comers. It trashed an old world red Burgundy from 2015. So we took it into the new world and we put it up against the 2016 Felton Road. And it beat that. It's beaten all comers, and there's not much of it left. So here it is, just to refresh your memories. It's the Elk Cove. It's 2016. It's from the Willamette Valley in Oregon, so West Coast US Pinot, and not expensive. In the previous videos I was talking about it being £30, £33. I think I picked up some of these for actually 22 quid. So this is cheap wine, not by any means expensive. And it's beaten all these expensive wines. The red Burgundy, £60 a bottle. The Felton Road, £37 a bottle. So the big question is, can it finish the year unbeaten, undefeated, or is it going to be taken down? And I had to bring out a big gun to try and take it down. And here's what we've got. It is from 2017, South Africa, so New World, but we're going to try another continent. And it is the Peter Max Crystallum. I think Peter Max is if not their top Crystallum Pinot Noir, certainly their oldest. Peter and Max. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about cool climate Pinot Noir from South Africa, just north and just inland of Hermanus, in Hemel on Aarde. And I'm sure I've butchered the pronunciation of that. Sorry, Andre. But I think it's a little bit up in the hills. And this is two brothers who've taken over from their famous father, Finlayson. It's actually a vineyard that's been in the family for 3 generations, now the 3rd generation. 2 brothers, neither of them vintners. One's an architect and one did sort of economics, I think, in terms of his studies, politics. But they've taken on the farm, fabulous farm. It actually started when it kicked off. It was only planted with Sauvignon Blanc, and actually where the Peter Max comes from is they used to, as seems to be familiar to South African wine farms, they get grapes from different plots and bring them in and blend them themselves. And so the Peter Max was actually, Peter and Max were the first names of the 2 providers of Pinot Noir to the farm. But now the Sauvignon Blanc's all gone, and they only focus on the 2 venerable Burgundian grapes, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. This one's a 2017, so one year older than the Elk Cove, but I don't think that's going to have much of a difference. And 2017, of course, a fabulous vintage for South African wines. I suspect I'm probably drinking this too young, but I just couldn't wait. I had to try it up against the Elk Cove. I must admit, I don't recall the price of this, so I'm not really sure price comparison, but the Crystallum I think is in the 20s as well. One of the greatest bargains, by the way, that you'll ever get. And I think people who know more about it than me are saying now's the time to really buy the Crystallum, because these price points won't last once the world gets out, once the vintages really gather and this wine gains its reputation. Anyway, let's move on. So we've got the 2 wines here. This is the Crystallum, this is the Elk Cove. This, by the way, is the last of the Elk Cove, at least the 2016. And just looking at it, again, as usual, I'm not sure how well it comes across, but the Crystallum, a bit like the Felton Road was, is definitely a bit lighter. It's the one that if you picked these up and were asked which one's a Pinot, you'd say the Crystallum, because it's got that kind of, you can see right through it almost. It's very dilute looking. Whereas the Elk Cove, as we've seen on previous videos, is actually quite dark. It does have that kind of pinky purple tinge, but if you had a quick glance at that, you could be mistaken for saying, oh, well, that's probably a Cabernet or something. It really is quite dark. Moving on to the aromas, quite leggy, the Crystallum there. And these have been open for probably an hour, so they're well aerated at this point. That's really quite. It's definitely Pinot, and I think it's that New Worldy Pinot. But even as I say that, when I think New Worldy Pinot, you sometimes get those really insane floral bouquets like violets and red fruits, almost flowery. That doesn't have any of that. So it's there's something distinctly. It's almost like the New Zealand Pinot, that kind of tea. And oil, those kind of strange, strong, pungent flavors. Maybe you'd confuse that for a Burgundy on the nose, but it's certainly revealing itself as a Pinot. Back to the Elk Cove. When I had a quick smell of this earlier, it wasn't really revealing anything. We'll see whether it's opened up. And that's interesting. There's another test going on here between the Elk Cove and the Crystallum, but the other test in play here is this bottle was first caravanned, probably early this year. So this has probably been at least 9 months under caravan. And when I smell that, it's certainly not a cork smell, so no problems there, and it isn't corked, but it does smell quite aged, almost like something that's a lot older than sort of 5 years old, and something that sometimes you get a wine where you've just kept it too long, and the tannins have all faded, the fruits are gone. It's almost that sort of, you're just left with wood or oak. That has that smell of that. So I wonder whether there's been any fall off on this under caravan. Shouldn't be, but we'll keep that in mind as well. I think I'll start with this one actually. I'll start with the Elk Cove to taste. Okay, so let's take the caravan picture, the caravan conundrum out of the picture. That's fine. That's in great shape. Nothing has fallen off there. That is full of flavour. Feels very fresh, very full in the mouth, very well balanced, and it's going to be tough. That continues to be a fantastic wine. Really, at any price point up to a limit, but certainly for 22, 23 quid, that's insane. I'm going to give it another swirl. Yeah, it's just glorious. It's just lovely. I think that's probably the type of New World Pinot, as I've said before, that really just sings to me. It's the one that I like. It's the me wine. It doesn't taste of strained tea bag. It doesn't have that really blockbuster, very pungent taste that I perceive in some other Pinots, certainly the Central Otago Pinots. It's lovely balanced fruit, quite tame in the fruit. It's almost the fruit takes a backseat to the body and the texture, but is there. That's probably what makes it so good for me. So I think maybe I'm just a sucker for West Coast Pinots, or in particular Oregon Pinots, and I would encourage you to figure that out for yourself. What are the ones that you actually like in the US, or indeed which continent do you like your Pinots to be from in the New World? Because they are not a homogeneous group. They're hugely different. So moving on to the Crystallum, I'll just take a quick mouth washener. And it is a beautiful looking wine. It's so oily in the glass, carries itself really well, really spectacular looking. And we'll see whether that smell comes through. It's almost like a mechanic's garage. Or a car that's just driven over a sort of a whole driveway full of rose stems or something like that. Really just that sort of cut green fruits, really. Let's try it. I think the first thing I'd say about this wine is that it is clearly a huge quality wine, and again, for the prices, if that's still in the 20s, then it's incredible value for money. You can almost taste or you can almost perceive from the taste of the wine the work and the skill that has gone into making that wine. Now, I had a look at the website today, and I don't want to give the impression that they over-engineer the wine. In fact, it's the opposite. They try and let the grapes do the talking, and they do very little to the wine. They said that this 2017 vintage was a slightly more sort of herbaceous and savoury flavours than perhaps usual. So I think what they mean by that is probably more texture, body, more of those sort of secondary flavours rather than the big fruits. They kept it sitting on the skins for a month, for 4 weeks. They have, I think, 30% of it is bunched, and the rest is taken off its, the grapes are extracted. So that's maybe giving some of that herbaceous savouriness as well. Let me just have another taste. Quite acidic, definitely quite acidic. Again, maybe too young, but Pinot, yeah, maybe whether it would last many years, I suspect it probably would, but whether it would get better, I don't know. But it may relax a little bit. As you can tell, I'm sort of pontificating here because it's going to be a very tight call this time around, and it's the big one. Will the Elk Cove survive the year undefeated, or will it be taken down just before Christmas? Just going to try it again. My goodness, they are remarkably different. The Crystallum is quite, it's more acidic, it's sharper, and it's got less fruit, I think, or different fruits. Whereas the Elk Cove, and I think this is what impressed me about this wine all year long, is some of these wines, they talk to different parts of your mouth. I don't know if that makes sense. Some get the acidity down the side, some have maybe, I don't know, a little touch of sweetness on the front, some maybe it's the tannins as they go down the back. The thing about the Elk Cove is it searches out every taste bud in your mouth, every corner of your mouth, and makes sure that it makes an impression in every spot. And that's what I like about it, is it's pleasurable. It's hugely pleasurable, and probably easier to drink, certainly for me, than the Felton Road. The Burgundy, I think, just maybe I was drinking it too young. It just didn't express for me. It didn't impress me. And the Crystallum, we'll give it one last go. I think it's time to wrap this up. And I think, it kills me to say it, I think what I'm going to do is say that the winner of this wine shootout is the Crystallum. I don't think that means that I will shut down the video and go and drink that instead of the Elk Cove. I think I probably personally still prefer maybe just swigging down the Elk Cove, but the Crystallum is so impressive. Structurally, it's like an artisan cheese or something like that. It just feels very bespoke. 16,000 bottles, so it's not that small, but it just has that. It feels like they have engineered every drop, or applied their art and their craft to every sip out of every bottle, and that's hugely impressive. And I think for that reason, I'm just going to say the Crystallum is going to be the best Pinot that we've had on the channel this year. But big plaudits to the Elk Cove. And just to finish off, I actually picked up a couple of bottles of, I think, the 2018 vintage of the Elk Cove on the Wine Society about a month or so ago. I meant to look before the video, and unfortunately I've forgotten. But if you're in any way persuaded by the Elk Cove videos this year, and by all means have a look back at the other two videos, have a look on the Wine Society, because if they do have some left at £22, I can guarantee you will not be disappointed. But today, the winner, we're going to say, is the Crystallum. It's beaten indirectly the Felton Road and a Burgundy from 2015, and it's directly just knocked off Elk Cove off its perch. But listen, it's been a great year. Thanks so much for watching the channel. I've loved visiting some of your cellars and your tasting rooms and taking the channel on the road. Who knows, maybe we'll be back in 2022. The one thing I can say, one of my big regrets of the year is, thanks to COVID, I didn't manage to make it up to my friend Neil's with Andre up to Edinburgh, and he has the best cellar of the lot. So if for no other reason, there will be one more video coming from there when I manage to make it up next year. But in the meantime, happy Christmas to all of you. I hope you bring out your best wines for Christmas. Don't hold back. And yeah, if you fancy some more videos in 2022, stick the thumbs up and give it a like, hit the bell. But anyway, from the tasting room here at Wine with Chris, thanks so much. Happy Christmas. Take care.